Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and the society in general. I am Father George Ehusani, and I have with me in the studio Majeed Dahiru, staff of Terra and public affairs analyst, who is very passionate about the issues of this country and wanting to see this country transformed. Majeed, you are welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much, Father.
Great. So, these are issues you deal with every day. Leadership and the fortunes of our people. Recently, we had some melodrama in River State. We had some election in Edo State, followed by some melodrama where one court ruled that election should happen, another court ruled that election should not happen. And then police deployed, police chased away, all kinds of things. And you can see that this has very little to do with the people and with national development or state development. It is about state capture. The caliber of persons we are having in leadership, occupying leadership positions at all levels, seem to be a real problem. And I'm asking myself, what measure of restructuring in terms of tinkering with the administrative structures? What kind of restructuring, if you have this kind of human beings, what quality of restructuring, administrative restructuring, whatever, will change the character of politics in this country? And it is not only the, as we discussed earlier in another forum, it's not only the old people. You can see it in the young people that are coming up, in the young politicians, young political leaders. You can see the same. In fact, if not getting even more ruthless. So, what is the future of Nigeria with the caliber of persons, with the character of human beings that are in leadership positions? What's the future of this country? And what can we do about it for the sake of our children and children's children? What can be done?
Nigeria has no future if we continue on this path. And there are numerous examples to clearly show you that. One is Somalia. The other is Lebanon. And before Somalia and Lebanon was Yugoslavia. Any country that is configured the way Nigeria is configured has no future.
No future?
At all. And that is why from 1960 till now, 64 years later after independence, Nigeria seems to have gotten worse.
Incrementally worse.
Incrementally. And you made reference to what has happened in River State over the weekend and what happened in Edo a few weeks before that time. These are clear indications that Nigeria's democratic political process, has clearly degenerated into a criminal franchise, a free-for-all, across party lines, of power grab at all costs possible for self-service only. So the people are not in the equation. And this is by no means a democracy anymore. It has lost its soul. At the heart of democracy is the people. And once that is taken out, it means democracy has lost its real essence in Nigeria. And that is why democracy has failed to deliver on its key expectations of improved welfare and security. If you recall vividly, in 1999 or even 1979, whenever we have this euphoric transition from military to civil rule, there's this expectation that things will be better. Very
high expectations.
Very high. So we used to have this saying that the
civilian rule is better than the best military rule.
And so that's because of the faith we have in democracy. So what we have today is simply a criminal franchise across board. So, and this criminal franchise have installed in government houses, have installed individuals at the legislative arm of government, and even the judiciary, all manners of bandits. So you have administrative bandits, you have legislative bandits, and you have judicial bandits all running the Nigerian state. So state capture has become the essence of our political exercise since 1999. And this is not so difficult to understand why. And it's something we've dealt with at the Terra Leadership Foundation for many years. We've had programs on integrity. Concurrently, we ran programs on the need to build a nation out of the multiplicity of ethnic
interests.
Because we understand that the precursor or the condition precedent for the national development of any geographic entity in the world that can attain self-sufficiency in security and welfare is the social cohesion of the constituent peoples and the national integration arising therefrom, without which you can't have that consensus of purpose for collective development.
So, nation building, there are certain, I used to call it ingredients, missing ingredients in our nation building enterprise. That the kind of factors, principles, values that make for nation building that we lack, there are so many.
Absolutely lacking.
So, how do you build a tower on sand? You want to build a huge tower, and then you are building it on sand. If there is no, first of all, if there is no a bunch of honest, sincere, visionary, selfless persons that superintend the whole process of nation building, meaning leaders.
Leaders.
If what you have is what you are referring to as criminal gangs who are only interested in capturing the resources of the state, then we have no future.
We have no future. And those who set us on the path of nationhood, or rather those who inherited the Nigerian state from the colonial masters, did a poor job at nation building. And when the military came in to correct that, they also did a poor job at proper orientation before handing over back to the civilians in 1979. And so within 4 years, we went back to status quo. The same thing happened in 1999. In fact, 1999 was worse. It was hurriedly done, to the extent that we did not factor in the fact that democracy does not thrive on identities, ethnic and religious, and that democracy must thrive on pragmatic issues of collective economic, environmental and security interests of the constituent peoples, meaning that democracy and political processes must rest essentially on pragmatic issues of economic development. So you can have arguments, you can have different opinions on how to develop a people, but what democracy must never descend into is contestation for power
based on
ethnic and religious tendencies. So what you have today is what is called prebendalism. And Nigeria has been studied as a test case of prebendalism, where an average political leader in Nigeria, either elective or appointive, have a sense of entitlement over the patrimony of the state. So you make a Nigerian a governor, he covets the public resources to his own section with him as the major beneficiary. You appoint a Nigerian as a minister, a commissioner, a board chairman, whatever appointment you give him. In fact, down to the youth, you make a Nigerian today the leader of student union bodies. You can see that infection running through. There's a conversion of government patrimony, of patrimony, to private and sectional use, and it is normalized.
So there is no sense of the common good.
It is absent. It's not there. It's not even there in recording at all, because the purpose of the state has been constructed around these tendencies. So we talk about people who don't have integrity. Integrity is not measured in the real sense of what integrity should be, which is somebody that will set aside his personal or social interest for the common good in administering a common patrimony. In the case of Nigeria, what is integrity here is how far and how much can you go to actually distort the common patrimony for sectional and personal interest. So for instance, if you are appointing a minister today, your constituency will not judge you on your integrity by how much you performed on the task of being a minister for the collectiveness of the Nigerian people.
No, it is what you brought to my village.
What you brought home. So if you don't bring something home, you lack integrity, you're not a great man, you are irresponsible, and you're not fit for purpose.
That's putting integrity on his head.
On its head. And so, you do not blame the people generally too, because there is no alternative to this. And so there's a question you asked earlier about how do we get out of this. You recall that there was um, a review session at the Savannah Center.
Yes, we had it.
That I represented Terra. So I led one of the subcommittees on national development. And to God be the glory, we were able to put out there that look, Nigeria does not need so much of tinkering or the structuring of the structure itself. While no structure is perfect, while no constitution is perfect, and all is just work in progress. What is more important is the reconfiguration of Nigeria and Nigerians along the lines of nation building to sustain democracy. And to do this will require political parties. The political parties are the brain boxes of democracy all over the world.
And right now, we don't really have.
We don't have any political party in Nigeria. Father, it is so bad that there's no political party in Nigeria with a credible membership register.
Now.
None. I repeat, none. There is no political party with a credible membership register.
And without political parties, how do you run a democracy?
You can't run a democracy. And for so long, we've kind of overlooked the importance, or should I say understated the importance of political
Which is why
parties.
people just move. Today they are APC, tomorrow they are PDP, next tomorrow they are APP, and then they just keep moving up.
Because political parties are simply platforms to grab power and share resources. It's as simple as that. Ordinarily, political parties are supposed to be an embodiment of the ideas of nation building.
And you must already be practicing those ideas in the party.
In the party, starting from the credibility of a membership register. That is what you want to bring to bear across the country, has to be seen even in how you are organized within your own political party. So what we need today is a coalition, a coming together of the willing. Nigerians who believe, for instance, that tribe and religion has no place in state affairs, and that we are essentially one people, must begin to come together and congregate for the purpose of national redemption.
You know, to arrive at that, Majeed, there are obstacles to overcome.
Yes.
If you have been in Abuja for many years.
Yes.
If Abuja is not a good example because suppose of a federal capital, but imagine that you are in Ibadan or in Ado-Ekiti
yes.
for many years. You are required to go to your village if you are seeking elective position.
Down to your ward, not just a village.
Now, you are required to go and enlist in your ward.
Yes.
And so you have to have recourse to them from time to time. Otherwise, they can suspend you. And the system is that if they suspend you from the ward where you registered, you cannot.
And that's because the existing political parties do not understand the ideas of nation building. This in itself is an anathema to nation building.
Because, I mean, let's say you have been in
Ibadan,
Oka or Ado-Ekiti or Kaduna all your life, all your adult life, then you shouldn't need to go to any village. You should register where you are.
So that you can have say in how your economy,
the economy that is affecting you, the security that is affecting you, where you are paying taxes, that's where you should.
That should be the starting point for political parties. So Nigerians that believe in this are supposed to come together now around the political movement. Because we're a democracy. There is no way out of our democratic challenges than applying more ingredients of democracy. Otherwise, we are on a path of self-destruction, and it is mutually assured, because there is no alternative in the horizon. All political parties are in the same basket as far as matter is concerned.
I mean, isn't it interesting? Before you came to the studio, I was discussing with Professor Oshita, and Oshita reminded me that 25-30 years ago, Hans Meyer wrote that book saying, "This house has fallen." And it is about Nigeria. He saw the leadership conduct. He saw the practice of leadership in this country, the practice of governance, and so on and so forth. And he looked and lamented and says, "This house has fallen." It was a prophetic statement. It was a prediction. And we say, no, how can you say this about our country? However, we have been running towards it. Precisely towards that prediction. I mean, they call it self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
If somebody says, you remember Olarotimi said something, the gods are not to blame.
Yes.
This boy is going to marry his mother.
And kill his father.
And kill his father. Then you are supposed to make sure that whoever you are going to marry will be 10 years younger than you. Just in case but you walk yourself towards exactly
The same prophecy.
They
That's
say,
the situation.
they said Nigeria is primed to collapse. Recently, from the US, another group did a study and said by 2030, this will be a completely failed state. What are we doing? What are the leaders doing? Economic, political, social, elite. What are we doing to ensure that we put a lie to that prediction that by 2030 we are going to it's going to be a completely failed state? We can already see that we are a failing.
We are exhibiting mild symptoms of state failure, and it's getting serious by the day. If a country cannot secure its entire territories, that is a
part of the failure.
If you cannot fulfill your basic responsibilities for citizens in terms of welfare and security,
if you can't feed your children,
if you can't enforce law and order across board, it is failure. If you have the kind of shenanigans going on, it is a sign of state failure. However, nothing seems to be done or being done to avert it. And the only thing that can be done today, symbolically, to avert this, is for the political leadership of this country to come to that difficult decision to commit class suicide. You see, when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came on board and removed subsidy on petrol and floated the naira and described his actions as bold and courageous
steps,
we said, no, these are very cowardly decisions because these are very easy things to do. Remove subsidy from petrol is an abdication of your responsibility to provide national security for your citizens. Flotation of the naira is the same thing. You have abdicated responsibility of currency security for your citizens. What should have been bold and courageous for the president to have undertaken was to take that decision to commit class suicide. To say, look, we have come to a point in our lives where we can't continue like this. And as leaders, we've enjoyed the juice out of this country since 1999 at least. And we are seeing clearly that this is no longer a road to sustainable nationhood.
Because it's not benefiting the majority of the people.
It is not even benefiting those in government, I can tell you for free. Because whenever they go abroad, they don't know this. When you fly in luxury aircrafts across the world and you have an impoverished citizenry as you have in Nigeria that you cannot even pay decent wages to, that are hungry, miserable, and are dying of illnesses, you see, your contemporaries look at you as an irresponsible father that is cruising around town in the Mercedes-Benz, attending parties, while your children are poorly fed, poorly clothed, and are barely sheltered.
The thing is, this matter, are you indicating that those who are in the positions of leadership today, from the local level to the national, can they see these issues? Is it that they are completely blinded against all this?
The truth is, you need a revolutionary leadership within the democratic setup. You need a leader, either in the opposition or in power. For example, we're talking about class suicide. We're referring to the president of the country as currently constituted. He's in a position to effect changes. And that is why the 1999 Constitution is very helpful in this regard. It confers so much power to the president for the purpose of good, not evil.
Chief Kanu Agabi calls it dictatorship that is protected by the Constitution.
So you can use that for the good of the people, so that you can vanquish any tendency that we want to challenge your authority towards making Nigeria a better place for all. That is the purpose why it was giving such executive powers to the office of the president. Now, you also need such leadership in the opposition. We're a democracy. You see, if you look at the history of America, the Republican Party was formed in the 19th century by people like Abraham Lincoln. The Republican Party you see today, with one major agenda item on the manifesto, the emancipation of black American slaves, among many other things. So they brought together a coalition of the willing, people who believe in this idea that, look, we should extend human rights and dignity of man to black American former slaves too, since they are human. They came together on an election and they won on that basis, and they proclaimed emancipation, even though he paid for it with his life. It led to a civil war, a unification, and of the ultimate death of assassination of Abraham Lincoln. But this is what a political party can achieve. We also saw, for instance, in other countries, where political parties have come up with the same agenda. Look, we want to stop this, we want to achieve this. Today in Nigeria, we need a political party that will be dedicated solely
to some ideal,
beginning with the most fundamental, to build a nation through political reconfiguration, to make every Nigerian at home anywhere he resides, and to substitute identity politics with real liberal democratic politicking that can encapsulate the economic needs, aggregate it with social needs, environmental needs, security needs, away from ethnicity and religion, in a manner that cannot produce the right leadership that will have a social contract based on these ideals.
My challenge is, who is to bring it about?
It can be anybody. It
It
requires vision.
About?
It requires purpose. It requires determination. Though I'm showing you, I invite to the opposition now to say, look, in as much as we have failure of governance in Nigeria, we also have failure of opposition in Nigeria.
Correct.
And that is the biggest danger to our democracy. Not even the leadership, because leadership can afford to fail and use power of incumbency to sustain themselves in power. But when the opposition also fails to bring up alternatives, it leaves us
and
with no choice.
Many in the opposition keep decamping.
So because there is no alternative. And Nigerians are always ready and willing and eager to embrace alternatives. Because we are essentially very good people. We simply want better things for us, but we don't know how to go about it. Because we don't have leadership both in power and in the opposition. So it's a catch-22 situation for us as a democracy.
In the interim, Nigerians are hungry.
Very hungry.
For the first time in my life of 67 years, I see adults coming on TV and say, we are hungry. Very embarrassing.
Yes.
People are receiving salary that it's not enough for them to fuel their cars. Just to fuel cars. We are not talking of rent. We are not talking of
just
food.
to fuel cars. We are not talking of children. For a month.
Just to fuel car. The
salary
is
cannot
not fuel their cars.
Yes.
And there are no clean public buses.
There's no public transportation system.
I mean, I drove from Kubwa to the center of the town, and I think I only counted 2 coastal buses.
Mass transit buses.
Yes, that is public transportation. Everybody is driving a car. So, but then that car, if you fill your tank 4 times in a month, is more than your monthly salary.
Far more than it.
What do we do in the meantime? Because the kind of visioning, the kind of thinking, the kind of planning you are talking about, people need to be a little comfortable to engage in it. How do we begin the process when people have been reduced to acrimonious poverty?
We need to appeal to the conscience of our current leaders. This thing you call economic reforms are nothing but economic deforms. It has so deformed our economy because what the president seeks to do through his twin policies of subsidy removal on petrol and flotation of the naira has no parallel anywhere in the civilized world. I've made this argument severally and I've cautioned that petrol, for instance, is Nigeria's most utilized energy product because of the nature of our economy. And that globally, all over the world, there's nowhere in the world where petrol or well-utilized energy products are sold at prices dictated by market forces.
I mean,
it's impossible.
You have constantly made this statement everywhere you have appeared. And it is quite, I mean, I agree with you that it is analogous to a father plants yams. That's the only thing he produces in his farm.
And expect his children to pay.
He harvests the yam.
Yes.
And then he because yam in where?
In Wuse Market.
In Wuse Market.
Sold for 1,000.
You must buy it for 1,000 in his house. And he has the responsibility of providing food
for his children.
But he says his children should come and buy it.
It's an abdication of responsibility.
I can't understand.
We can only continue to tell the government to reverse this policy. We knew how we got here. What we're saying in the sense is, you came in on a day, made a pronouncement. It has taken us down the hellhole of
50 years. It has taken us down 50
economic
years.
Hopelessness. Reverse it in the interim first. And then we can begin to have a conversation as to where do we go from here as a nation, as a country, in search of nationhood anyway. Until that is done, until we all add our voices to it,
But what is even more, are you not hearing that we are spending a lot more on subsidy today than before it was removed?
And that is the magic, economic magic that makes no sense to anybody. Because you cannot spend more for subsidy now that I'm paying with my soul to buy the same product. I have seen the damages, the ravages that this same policy is causing, and we are still trying to make up our minds as to what to do.
Well, we pray that somehow, by design or by default, something has to happen to turn our fortunes around. Because they say if you do not change your course, you will end up where you are headed. My hope is that we will not end up where we are definitely headed, because we are headed for destruction. So I pray that your efforts, the efforts of other people, to call our leaders to their senses, to do the right thing. And then the opposition also to organize themselves to do the right thing. And then the generality of the elite in Nigeria to gather together to form coalitions in order to get our leaders to do the right thing. I pray that this will happen soon rather than later. Thank you very much, Majeed.
Thank you, my father.
Thank you.